Hey, and welcome back to the Los Angeles International Film Festival. So that was Precarious, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by director Weston Terray today to do a bit of a Q&A and find out more about the film. So hi, Weston, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks, Natasha. Hello, everybody.
Thank you for joining me today. So I have a few questions. I'm very excited that I get to ask them today. So, first of all, how do you come up with something like this? What was the inspiration behind the film, and also the inspiration behind not just the idea but also the whole style and the whole look of the film?
It's a good question. That's a big question to start it off. I would say that it's a story that I've been thinking about for quite a while. But what's interesting about fantasy, or even just as you're sitting there daydreaming of what an interesting story is, it can so kind of grow to be much larger than you could ever do. And so I put off doing it for quite some time. Until finally you realize that some of these ideas sit in your head for so long, you simply have to do it somehow. So I think it really kind of started with the idea of making a period piece, not in the 1960s, but sort of falling back to sort of these chapter adventure books that existed that you read as a kid that are sort of light adventure, but then really kind of just taking that as a starting point and just as a way to get into just a completely new world, or just a whole new adventure, or not even fantasy, almost like it's not a dream, but just sort of like when you're starting to fall asleep, things start to loosen up. And I felt that that was a much easier way to get into the story rather than, dealing with the world, the modern 2021 world. And so, yeah, the story was so large that it was really just kind of starting and then diving into the world, and then in some ways leaving the script flexible enough to let it kind of grow on its own and pull in the direction that it wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it came together.
Wow, so it's fantastic. It's so magical. And part of capturing that is the acting. And I want to know a little bit more about how you work together with your actors in the casting and rehearsals and during the shoot to really capture the essence of the film.
Interesting. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of theater, but then there's also a lot of circus and acrobats and parkour. And so what's interesting is a majority of the people involved in the film were not theater actors. And so but there were people that were very trained in movement, and they were almost like, it wasn't that it was comedy, but it was that they were just everybody was happy to continue to, on such small sets, continue to work to really kind of get things down to a very clean movement. And so since we had plenty of time, there was something nice about just building a set, having actors come in, work through ideas, hone it, and then once it was ready, film it, and then the set would get taken down and the next set would get built. And so everything was done in sequence. So it became very easy for the actors to sort of just grow into their characters. It's always kind of a strange technicality that the life of a professional actor is to be able to hop around a story, to do the end first, to do like heavy crying and then go back, and to jump around, and how to keep that all. So it's a luxury to be able to start off with actors, have their character, and then let them just kind of grow over time.
Wow. And your sets they're beautiful. Tell us a little bit more about collaborating with your team to create them in the way that you wanted. So they were magical, but also functional for the purpose that you needed them to be.
Yeah, I think what's of interest is that when I first started, I was planning on just doing it with just cardboard and just with whatever materials were necessary just to get some version of the story available. And since it is done for so little money, there wasn't the idea of being able to just call up a team of people and say, hey, let's start building, here are the blueprints. So I was going to just dive in and do it myself, but this, while I was rock climbing, I ran into a woman, Louise Franco, who once she heard what I was doing, wanted to come on board as an art director. And between the two of us, I would build the sets, and once the framing was in place, she would come in and actually kind of do the set dressing and paint and sort of give it that look. And so again, with just a couple of people and enough time, it sort of took on its own life. And I feel like you had another question in there, but I got a little distracted. I mean, I guess the other interesting thing is that while it's always possible to go out into the real world and find, say, a house or find a tree house, and it would have made life a lot easier and would have gotten things done quicker, there was a complete joy of having control over all of the sets to be able to move walls or tear things apart or just build it exactly the way it needed to be. And I guess there's one last point. Since none of the people who were working on it were professional builders, everything is just slightly off. You would never find these places in the real world. And so I feel like that sort of helps move it into kind of like a not a crazy world, but not a real world, somewhere in between where you're like, something's not quite right here, but I'm going to go with it. And I feel like that was the exciting part about building it all.
It's fantastic. So how has the film been received in other places? I've read some fantastic articles and reviews as well. So just tell me a little bit more about where else it has screened and what it's currently doing at the moment.
Sure. It's interesting because when it was made, it wasn't really made to, how would I put it? It was made just in the sense that it felt like it was something enjoyable to make, and it felt like it felt right, but it was never sort of set to go out to, I was curious how it was going to be received. And I think that it's doing well. It's traveling around the world. It makes me really happy just knowing, especially in this day and age, that there are people that I would never run across in different countries who are getting the ability to see what we did. And I mean, even being part of the LA Independent Film Festival, all of these things, I don't necessarily take it for granted, because for anybody who's making something, it's not really the idea of selling it or trying to do it for the career. It's just like you want to be able to share it. And so, especially with there being so much out in the world on YouTube or wherever, the idea of actually having places where people can actually see what you've done is great. So whenever it gets translated into a foreign language with subtitles, it just warms my heart that there's that level of communication exists. So couldn't be happier.
Brilliant. So tell us about you. What are you up to at the moment? What's next for you?
It's a good question. I mean, there's an excitement now to be able to continue. I mean, it felt really strange to stop the story. In fact, when we were filming the final scenes, there was a desire to just keep adding more scenes, because it wasn't just the idea of a project that needed to finish on time. It became kind of like part of just like being able to live in this world was so enjoyable. And so it's been a little slow during the pandemic to just work on shorts, but there's a desire to just recreate that kind of environment again and sort of let something new take on a large shape. And so there's a lot of prep, a lot of building, and So at the end of the day, there's usually more ideas than there's time to actually work on them. So I think that that's it's not a bad place to be in.
Yeah, that's very true. Fantastic. So thank you for joining me today. And thank you to the audiences as well for watching. I hope you loved the film as much as I did. And I hope you've enjoyed the Q&A as well. And if you want to connect with the LA International Film Festival afterwards, then please find us. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Los Angeles IFF, and we're also on Facebook. We have a page and a group on there. So please come and say hi. And also, I'm sure it would be great for you to let us know what you think about the film, connect with Weston as well, and also share your thoughts about our other amazing films. So once again, thank you to everyone today, and thank you, Weston, for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Natasha. It's been great.